This is a great follow-up to Greg Drescher. Chef-driven menu redesign to basically lower the protein portfolio of meat and dairy and have more plants in it. And the quick summary here is the 10-year goal was met in 4 years, and they increased the goal to a 40% reduction. Jackie had to deal with the data. She got a whole dissertation's worth of work looking at thousands of lines of data. So Jackie had been lead dietitian at Stanford Dining, and she now has her own consulting business. Moira has been leading sustainability at Stanford for 8 years, if I remember our conversation. And it turns out food has the biggest impact on Scope 3 emissions. And then Andrew is going to be our representative chef. So Jesse Cool years ago said that we should always have a farmer, thank you, Bruce Taylor, and a chef. And actually this year in another panel, we're going to deal with waste with Andrew Schachman right here. Okay, but this one is a pretty unique panel. Is Abby with us? Oh, there she is, good. Okay, sorry, and I didn't really introduce Abby. So Abby came on as sort of the research coordinator at Menus of Change University Research Collaborative and has been promoted a couple times. And so she's now full-time. She lives in Portland, but she does a lot of work with the CIA and coordinates a lot of different programs. So we're going to spend 40 minutes or so. Wait, you can start that clock. You guys didn't start the clock for us. I think you got to go down to 40. Thank you. Okay, I'm guessing that's what we have left, something like that. We're going to talk about this challenge. So you can't fix it if you can't measure it. So we're measuring menus. Chefs are redesigning menus. You have to translate that into Scope 3 emissions. What does that even mean, right? Okay, so to get into the nitty-gritty, I would love to start with Jackie, who was there from the beginning of this 10-year path. How did it get started?
So as Christopher mentioned, it was Sophie Egan, who at the time was with the CIA and now is with the Stanford Food Institute and the MCURC, and Eric Montel, who leads Stanford Dining Hospitality and Auxiliaries. And they had this vision, could we use this concept of collective impact to measure the impact that this University Research Collaborative is having? Can we actually see these plant-rich, plant-forward shifts in the data? And can we track it year over year? Can we set targets? And all of this is built into that collective impact framework. And so we started out with a very small number of universities just to kind of pilot it. There are a lot of learnings in those early years, but for the last 6 years, we now have collected hundreds of millions of pounds of food data from 30+ universities, many of them who have been participating since the very beginning, so we can actually see trends over time. And as Christopher alluded to, it's been incredibly successful, and with the target of a 25% collective reduction in food-related greenhouse gas emissions, nearly met that target many years in advance, so we extended that to a 40% reduction target. And it was my pleasure to lead that initiative for 5 years and to lead it to that point where we had seen all of those emissions reductions. And my work now with the CIA is looking at what are the other impacts that we can measure. I mean, greenhouse gas emissions, slam dunk. I think everyone doing research in this space, it's just so clear. These plant-forward shifts, reducing meat in favor of plants, it has huge environmental benefits. But what are some of the other benefits from those shifts? And so the work that I am leading now is looking at the health benefits. So we looked at a similar cohort of universities. We modeled their procurement data after the planetary health diet to see, what would the emissions reductions be, 46% reduction in emissions. What would the impact be on the healthy eating index, which is a metric of nutrition? And we found a 20-point increase in the healthy eating index. And Christopher, you could tell everyone, on a 100-point scale, that's a massive improvement in terms of nutritional quality. And then something we didn't really expect to find, it was kind of just a little side note, was a reduction in food costs, actually, about a 10% reduction in food costs. And so that led us, in working with Abby and the MCURC and the Culinary Institute of America, as well as in partnership with the Stanford Food Institute, we are currently working on a project to look at the business case for plant-forward procurement. And so we took this collective impact data, I looked at the trends over the last 5 years, and found that actually, very similarly, about 11% reduction in food costs, equating to over $30 million of savings annually for these collective institutions. And so then I said, well, what if we hit that 40% target? What would that look like? And we're looking at about a $45 million savings annually across these 30-plus institutions from making these plant-forward shifts. So again, win for the environment, win for health, and now win from the economic perspective, because some of the research that we've done has shown actually it's not the environmental benefit, it's not the health benefit. The number one driver of procurement decisions in universities is, I guess, costs, food costs. So how can we paint that holistic picture of all of the benefits of shifting this procurement? And through the Collective Impact Initiative, we're able to do that.
Awesome. Isn't that amazing? And so part of this is, so that should be enough. Hey, CEO, hey, president, hey, whoever's the business person, you're going to save some money. But a really interesting thing has happened environmentally over the last decade, and it has to do with Scope 3 emissions, which Moira is an expert at. And this idea, it's not just the direct purchases, it's sort of the overall issue. Can you help explain Scope 3, why it's important and why Stanford bought into it and why other university leaders are buying into it?
Yeah, absolutely. So hi, everybody. My name's Moira Zbella. I sit within procurement services at Stanford, and I oversee our responsible purchasing program, which a huge part of that is our Scope 3 emissions program and accurately measuring the indirect emissions of what we purchase, among other things. So the concept of Scope 3 emissions is this idea of indirect emissions. Our Scope 1 and 2 emissions, many organizations have measured them for decades. They're anything, essentially what's emitted directly from the campus or from the entity's operations. Scope 3 emissions are the indirect emissions that arise from anything that the university or organization has influence over, but isn't necessarily emitting directly. So very commonly, some big categories of these Scope 3 emissions are the embodied carbon in everything that we purchase. So that's attempting to measure everything from raw material extraction to manufacturing to transporting a good to Stanford's campus. Emissions associated with travel are another example, or commuting to campus. So there's many categories of Scope 3 emissions, but very commonly we see that the emissions associated with what we purchase are really the largest driver of those indirect emissions. And within that, for universities in particular, food is a huge driver because of all of the food procurement we do for our dining halls and elsewhere. So Stanford has a goal to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions by the year 2050. I hope many of you are aware of that, especially if you're affiliated with Stanford. And one of the unique things about Stanford is that goal actually includes Scope 3 emissions. So by 2050, we are charged with actually reducing and or eliminating the emissions associated with those things that we purchase. Obviously, a lot of that is going to come from industry and decarbonization within the industry, and then a lot of that is going to come from the decisions that we make about purchasing here on our campus. So that's kind of the framework that we're operating in at Stanford, and really, my team's work is, especially around the food space, is really to help measure and mitigate the emissions, the greenhouse gas emissions associated with our food purchases. Just to paint the picture a little bit, measuring greenhouse gas emissions associated with food purchases is easier said than done. It's quite complex. Jackie obviously could tell you a lot about that. But so there's a few different ways you can go about doing it, and we've partnered very closely with Jackie and others in dining to really make sure that we're kind of setting a kind of leadership precedent in the way that we're actually measuring and mitigating those emissions.
When I talked to you earlier this week, you were at a conference.
Yesterday, yeah.
Of other, I can't remember who the group was, other universities?
Yeah, I was at the Higher Education Sustainability Conference, and Scope 3 emissions is a trend among many institutions. I think folks are really recognizing that we need to really kind of address the climate crisis urgently. We need to be aware of our impact, not just of what we're emitting right here on our campus, but the broad impact of our decisions. So I think we're really lucky at Stanford that our leadership embraced that very early, but many, many other organizations are kind of value and try to track and reduce Scope 3 emissions now as well.
Awesome. I want to get back to both of you about some of the details of that, like the math and some possible business opportunities or something like that. Andrew, we're asking on chefs to redesign menus. Mm-hmm. How challenging is that? And something I wish you would address, given that Jackie just brought up cost saving for food. What about cost of labor? Mm-hmm. Doesn't it take more labor to make lentils and carrots delicious than beef that you just flipped once or twice and served? Or how would you address that?
I think it's about being creative within those parameters. So our staff they bring a lot of talent to the table, and so I think the convenience of purchasing now, we can buy pre-cut vegetables, which it saves on labor, but it costs a heck of a lot. And so I think where we're at the moment with budget constraints, really focusing on outcomes through what we're serving in terms of the financial focus, I think we are being challenged as chefs. So I think, for example, today's soup was supposed to be another soup. And we have a big steam kettle which has a stopper on it, and I poured 10 gallons of soup in to reheat it, and it all went down the drain. So today's soup that you had was put together in 45 minutes. So again, I think it highlights the great attributes of dried lentils. They're on the shelf, so no refrigeration. And it was able to be put together very quickly, efficiently, with not too much labor. We're looking at the vegetables where even just minimally processed grilled vegetables on vegetable boards, so they actually hold up better through the full lunch service. The students actually are eating more of those as opposed to what we were doing, which was if we were roasting the vegetables in the oven and then putting them in a hot holding vessel, they would sort of sweat out and sort of look oily or watery. So we've gone and we got a lot of feedback from the students on that. So now the grilled vegetable boards, labor and cost are in balance. So, and I think the great thing is the end result in terms of consumption is sort of happening too. So we're actually producing a better product.
Fantastic. All right. So let's bring Abby into this a little. So Abby's history is she was a chef. And now she's sort of the research manager and the Menus of Change and Menus of Change University Research Collaborative, coordinator of many things. Sorry she has to be here remote today. Abby, what's your perspective on how this fits into the whole MOC, CIA portfolio?
Yes, and thank you. Thanks for having me here virtually. As Christopher mentioned, I came into MCURC from on the research side, but I have a chef background. So I actually had the good fortune of being a part of this collaborative when I was working as a corporate food manager for Airbnb, who at the time was what we call an ex officio member of MCURC. And that means that they're a business organization that is following the principles, that is participating in some of the research in the group. So then, coming into on the research side, having a chef background in grad school, I found it very interesting to start to really understand better the power of chefs in driving food system transformation. Chefs are making a lot of decisions every day as we're talking about procurement, menu design, operational decisions, and they're also really trusted messengers of potentially healthy and sustainable eating habits. So for a diner, so they are sort of the linchpin, as I think chefs here are such an important part of this collaborative, an important part of the research, because they bring the knowledge that will make, hopefully, the most plant-forward dishes, the top-selling dishes. And I think that probably Greg, before me, talked about this deliciousness factor. If chefs are able to make the plant-forward dishes unapologetically delicious, it's the term we like to use, then that really helps drive the changes that can be made at the sourcing level. And it changes the menus, it changes the scope 3 emissions, it changes the opportunity to support local agriculture, really get more plants on the menu. And so these principles, hopefully now the principles will show behind me here, these serve as the backbone of many initiatives that the CIA is leading across different industries. And I have the good fortune of now overseeing several of these in our K-12 school nutrition space, college and universities, high volume food service, even educating healthcare professionals in guiding their patients toward healthier and more sustainable choices. And really at the center of that is the culinary skills and the menus that can really drive these habits forward and really help transform the system. So what I love about the principles here are they're really a framework. There are some of these principles have to do with what is on the menus and in what amounts, and some really are about sourcing. And so I think that it really sets us up well to use procurement in particular as this lever of change. And it's really important here that we're able to have this partnership between research and evidence, science-backed principles that really can be explained and translated for chefs and food service operators to really make the best decisions and help them understand that really in order for us to, and as Christopher, going back to the beginning, said, in order to really understand how these principles can have impact, we have to measure that, and that's through research. And that's why this university research collaborative is really at the center. It's sort of an engine of change for a lot of different industries, and it helps inform decisions that a lot of chefs in outside of college and university, they can be guided by the research publications that we're doing, which are both academic and also more operational, action-based toolkits based on the research.
Fantastic. Oh, okay, so playing off that geekiness, the line-by-line item, I'm going to go back to Jackie. Okay, so different universities using different software for procurement, and then I'm going to hit you up for scope 3 type of data, but just this line-by-line item, you showed me on a Zoom screen what the lines looked like, and I don't know if Nargis or Hedy or Keegan are still out there, sort of our business partners for the Food Accelerator, but is there sort of a business opportunity to come up with a better procurement system? And I actually met somebody at the meeting already today who was talking to me about a group that does that, but that whole accounting side of measuring things isn't as simple as, gosh golly, we decided to measure it and it looked pretty good. How hard was it?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna try not to put everybody to sleep, but I feel like I'm amongst my data nerd friends here. Yeah. Like I've got Natalie and I were talking about this. I know Katie's here, so I know I'm amongst friends. But yes, it's an incredibly that from my perspective is the biggest challenge to scaling this, because I think there's so many, we can show the data, just all the positive impacts from the environment, the health, the cost, all of this. But in order to actually collect this data year over year, track it over time, and be able to use it as a metric to demonstrate the impact that we're having, we need to take, in many cases, tens of thousands of lines of data about mixed dishes that have 5 or 6 different ingredient types, and we have to figure out, okay, what percent is it, the beef lasagna, what percent is it beef and cheese versus dairy and grains? And so thank you, Natalie, for calling out whoever did your data cleaning, because that is a tremendous amount of work and something I think that we're well positioned with the advances in technology and AI to solve. And I think that can be something that we can solve for pretty quickly with the right resources. And so I know Katie from Greener by Default and I we actually have a proposal we're working on, so I'm just going to give a little plug. So if there's anyone interested in that work, and I know there's a lot of AI experts at Stanford here too, I think that's an incredible opportunity to be able to scale this and be able to track this data, which you're seeing on the screen right now, which here you can just see the impact you're having, right? This is the in red is your percentage beef by volume on the left, and the percentage of beef's contributions to greenhouse gas emissions on the right. And so we can actually watch these graphs, these pie charts shift year over year, and we can see what is driving these changes, what's driving the health impacts, what's driving the emissions reductions, what's driving the cost benefits, which, spoiler alert, it's reductions in beef and increases in gooms and pulses.
Yeah, thank you.
But tracking that data over time is a tremendous effort, and that's definitely something I'm hoping technology can help with.
And then getting back to another level of complexity here. So a lot of the life cycle analysis that's done here is using some incredible data from Poor and Nemechek and maybe others. I'll look at Natalie's to see if, I don't know how many data sources there are here, but when Moira is looking at this, I mean, one of the opportunities locally, are we going to get our beef from I-5 or from Sonoma? And do we have the level of data that says, oh, yes, we have data to support that if we just change our local California procurement, we're going to have an effect on scope 3. How close are we to that, or how far away? Or
Yeah, it certainly adds another level of complexity after you've gone through all the procurement data that Jackie just talked about. Then you have to figure out what are the emissions factors that I'm going to apply to that data to most accurately calculate what the greenhouse gas emissions are associated with this. And many of those emissions factors are developed using industry averages, basically saying across the entire industry. Sometimes it's based on where regionally, where the meat is raised, but ultimately they're kind of averages. So at Stanford, we said, well, at the end of the day, the way that we're going to kind of drive changes in this is not only reducing our beef purchasing, which of course we want to do as much as we can, but then also for what's remaining, we want to procure the most sustainable. And so we want to, how do we really measure that, as Christopher asked? And so we started asking our suppliers. We said, what are the practices on the farms where this meat is coming from? And we worked with a third party to kind of put together a tool, a calculator basically, that based on the responses by animal protein type that we got from our vendors, we were able to kind of calculate the precise emissions associated with the meat that was coming from that vendor. We did that for dairy and eggs as well. So that was, it was a decent amount of work for Stanford to kind of put that together and figure it out. But at the end of the day, it really just comes down to having close partnerships with your vendors and asking a few questions that make them think a little bit more about, okay, where is my food coming from? Asking those questions also just generally sends market signals. Okay, people are interested in sustainable food and regenerative farming. And so, I think our biggest takeaway was just, encouraging organizations to ask those types of questions to their vendors, start to collect the data. Don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. And that can drive change in the market, as well as just make our own emissions accounting and decision-making more precise.
And so talking to Jackie about this, at one point it sounds to me like you sort of threw up your hands a little and said, most of these 2 pie charts is the protein portfolio. If you didn't have time to measure everything accurately, you should get that part better. And in the back of my mind, I'm sort of thinking of organic certification in the US. So that's been a growing thing that's going on. So once you get certified for organic, there's better and worse in that field. Like you can just barely meet the guidelines for organic and get certified in an industrial way, or you could not have the money to get certified for organic and actually exceed the regulations and the requirements. I don't know if you've ever seen that in the farmer's market. Sorry, it takes 3 years. We're going to be there. We're not organic yet. And some snooty Palo Alton turns up their nose and they walk away without hearing the rest of the description that it was actually a better choice. If we really did get to the point where we could be monitoring different beef producers, what level of recertification or webcams are going to need to be there? So if we did set some guidelines, thank you for saying don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. The big deal is changing the portfolio and having less meat. Then the next change is getting better quality meat. But that certification process, how much does that come up in your sustainability conferences?
It comes up a lot. Most commonly, and Jackie has helped with this too, but in sustainability reporting, especially around food, the most common questions you get are, what are the certifications that you're using? I would say I personally, like you said, at the local, farmers market, I don't think we should necessarily put all of our eggs in that certification basket. I think there's a lot of good work that goes on from entities that are not necessarily certified, but it does make the job of purchasers a little bit harder because they need to know what questions to ask, and they need to have some level of trust in their vendors that that the answers they're getting are accurate. So, I think it's a balance.
So it could be yet another business opportunity for Stanford to come together and figure out what's that certification going to involve. We could pull the law school in here for regulatory things, pull the business school in here for business models that are going to do this. And at the end of the day, the students have to leave the dining hall saying, yes, I like that. It tasted good. So tell me the bizarre thing that's going on here that I think sort of got brought up earlier. The horrible thing in the US is taste and health have been disassociated, right? I mean, Greg Drescher tells a great story of a restaurant they were working with where they were trying to make things heart healthy. And so they made them heart healthy, and they were super proud of the work that they'd done with their menus, and they came up with a little icon that they would put next to the more heart healthy items, and the menus got delivered, and they were missing the icons. They said, oh my God, after all that work, I can't believe you're missing the icons. And they said, well, do you want us to reprint them? We'll give you a reduced cost. And they said, no, we'll just wait till these get dirty, and the next time that we print up the menus, we'll put the icons on. So they had the brand new menu. Items were kicking butt. They were selling really well. They reprinted their menus. They put the icons on, and they tanked. Once they saw that those were the healthier items, they weren't ordered. In the US, we have dissociated health and taste. So Andrew put that whole thing together for you. Was that mind-bogglingly, unapologetically? Why? But I really feel like a lot of work needs to be done there, and a university campus is such a great place to do this. I've often heard Eric Montel say, oh, my first job is to educate the students, and my second job is to feed them. So it really is an incredible opportunity to educate students. You do so much to educate students. Can you speak to some of your greatest successes and maybe some of your failures in real life?
Sure. So successes. So I've started, just getting back to earlier on, talking about Fibre First. I've been doing Fibre First classes for Be Well, which is our staffing population as well as students, and so I've done it for your class, Christopher, and I've done it for the alt meat class, and I think it's really just I've done it with one of the students for a Cornerstone project. So I think it's just really sort of, the interesting thing with that was he presented what I was teaching, but because it was a pair-on-pair presentation, all his friends kind of sucked it up and lapped it up, whereas if I presented, or sort of as a teacher, there's sort of a bit of a snooze factor to it, where they're sort of like, oh, here we are being told what to do, et cetera, et cetera. So, so I think the successes, I think, this year in the dining halls we've really made an effort to highlight the plant-forward menus we are doing without focusing on the plant-forwardness of them. So I think we've let the plant-forward community know that we do care, but then in the same breath, we're not trying to push it on everybody so it's there. And I think once the students get to the dining halls, they've been in class all day, that's their quiet time, that's their sort of time where they eat, recharge. And so we're kind of mindful about how we do create what we give to them in terms of education. I think Jackie can talk about that a bit later in terms of, we're not forcing it on them. And so I think the getting failures, I think sometimes when we try too hard, again.
Meatless Monday.
Yeah, Meatless Monday, again. We're taking away your meat, you're not getting that.
People off.
Come on in. Yeah, so I think we had Diwali last night over at Flomo, which was 1,200 students. It was, when you look at the makeup, there was a lamb curry and a beef curry, but the other 80 or 90% of the menu was all lovely vegetables with lovely flavors, and there were no tags saying this is what you're not getting. So I think...
That you're not kidding.
Well, yeah, and I think sometimes we do have to be careful with trying to sort of say we are thinking of this, and then people just think you're taking it away from them. So it's a tough line to walk, Christopher. And then we also have religious considerations, allergens as well. I mean, so the dining hall has become a giant Swiss Army knife in terms of what we are offering, and we have to be sort of very thoughtful of everyone that comes into the room so that everybody collectively feels welcome. So so I think we're not sort of saying you can't eat meat because then you're creating guilt, and we don't want to do that either. So So I think the classroom is a good place for the learning to begin. Wherever that may be. Even here, we can talk about what we should be focusing on, the health benefits, because there's not a plate of food in front of you. And I think, the guilt factor, we all bring something from our familial cultural backgrounds, which, sometimes food carries a lot of guilt. There's a lot of shame associated with, some people with eating. If eating isn't just eating to be healthy, it brings a lot of other little tags with it. So we have to be very careful of that.
So let's bring in some of the Stanford faculty who work on interdisciplinary projects. Sorry if I'm misremembering. Are you on the dish study as a co-author? I feel like you are. Yes. And Abby, I think are you too late to have been a co-author on the dish study? I can't remember.
Too late.
Not on it. Okay, but you would have because you're managing all this. So let me just bring this up as a quick example. It seems like a little side tangent, but see what you like of this. And Jack, correct me if I'm getting any of this wrong. Started out with a psych professor, Ali Crum, whose thing in her world of psychology is mindsets. I don't think she actually cares what mindset it is. She just needs constant new projects, and one was vegetables. People don't like vegetables. That's a mindset that she wanted to overcome. Working with a linguistics professor, Dan Jarafsky, who got a MacArthur Award Genius $500,000 thing. He has a joint appointment between computer science and linguistics, and wrote a book on food words. He went to the dining halls and realized that in a typical academic quarter, 15 to 20 different vegetables get served over the 10 weeks. On any single day, you have 4 or 5 vegetables. 4 or 5? Mm-hmm. Okay. And so they said, we're going to come up with 3 linguistic names for the vegetables. Every vegetable. The okra and the broccoli and the carrots and the corn and everything else. We're never going to change the recipe. It's always going to be the same recipe. This is a super important part. Don't change the recipe of the dish, but have a basic name, an indulgent name, and a health name. And so my favorite example is carrots. So you just have carrots, or you have low-sodium carrots, which is absence of a vilified nutrient, or high-fiber carrots, which is presence of a glorified nutrient, or you have twisted citrus glazed carrots. So they're rotating just the signage, not the recipe, across 7 universities. First they did a pilot at Stanford and it worked, and then they put it out across 7 different universities, if I got that number right. And probably the obvious thing that you were expecting is they put more servings of twisted citrus glazed carrots than just carrots. Okay, but here is the humbling side of the story for my field of nutrition science. They took 25% fewer servings if it said low-sodium carrots or high-fiber carrots than just carrots. When you added the health factor, they took less than if they were just plain friggin' carrots. But what was really fantastic about this collaboration was 7 universities. They replicated it so it wasn't Stanford only. Had a linguistics professor, had a psych professor, had a nutrition professor, had students and faculty across multiple divisions, had a dietitian, right? So that's the power of the university. So you're talking about teaching, and thank you for helping to teach in classes, but the living laboratory of the dining hall, like it's kind of cheating. It's not like a restaurant where they won't come back. They have a swipe card. They have to come back tomorrow. They can be pissed and they can complain, and I'm sure that happens too. But it's a pretty unique opportunity to bring them back again and again and try a nudge and try another nudge. And I don't know, speak to dish at all if you want to.
Yeah, and there's actually, in the original study here, there were 4 conditions, because we also looked at like the negative framing of health, right? So low sodium, low fat, some things being withheld, but we also looked at like, healthy carrots, or, positive promotion like nutrient-dense carrots, and those types of framings also did very poorly. So even if you frame it in a positive light, still, because of this association of taste, there was also another dimension where we actually, and Andrew, you might have been looped into this, but we cooked all the dishes that were cooked at all the universities, and we made them here, and we made students come through and taste test them to really figure out the mechanism behind this. And it really was that there was an expectation of taste that was being driven by what you called this dish, and that actually then translated into how delicious the students thought they were. So like on objective measures of deliciousness, like from 1 to 5, a Likert scale, if we said these were low sodium carrots, they actually experienced the taste of the carrots to be less tasty. So that's kind of the cool, like, psychology, physiology, something wild is going on there, but it's deeper than just kind of tricking people with fancy labels. It actually really is tying into your deep psychology of what do you associate healthy foods to be, and this idea that they're less tasty. But if we make them sound tastier, they actually are tastier even if we didn't change anything. Like, people just experience them to be tastier.
And it has led to the Edgy Veggie Toolkit.
Yes.
So if you go online.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah?
Well, I was just going to add a quick anecdote. But,
Go ahead, go.
Well, I know there's been similar research in sustainability labeling as well, very similar types of findings. And I just have this anecdote from my conference that I was at yesterday, full of sustainability professionals. We're in the lunch line, and there was one dish that was full of something labeled plant-based chicken. No description, no deliciousness modifiers, and not a single person took it. And everybody in the line was like, what is that? And these are people who do sustainability for a living.
Wow.
So, I mean, I think it just is true across the board. You've got to lead with that deliciousness factor.
There was just a big randomized control trial that was published on carbon labeling at University of Michigan, which is a MCURC member. Maybe Abby, I don't know if you saw that, but you could maybe talk about that. But they looked at carbon labeling and kind of found similar results with the sustainability framing.
Yeah, I'll just quickly say that what it seems like works when it comes to climate labeling of any kind is when there are multimodal interventions at play, right? That it is the first choice. It's like the most appealing, delicious choice on the menu. Maybe there's a little labeling system that's easy to understand, but that's not the main driver ultimately. It's the deliciousness that you're talking about. And to your point, Christopher, universities are great because it's a captive audience. They do come back, day after day, which is why it's such an excellent opportunity to, do some of these controlled experiments, and that are safe and delicious. Because also this is such a pivotal time to catch folks and really change some eating behaviors that can last a lifetime. So if they're open to trying dishes that contain legumes and pulses more than red meat, for example, they're going to continue to keep some of those habits for their time out of college and university.
Okay, I love your framing of the time span there. So think what we're representing today. We could get kids in school to establish habits forever. We get college-age students who are thinking more clearly and their frontal lobes are finally attached, or they finally got sick and they're in the hospital. Right? So today, at today's sessions, we're covering that whole span. Better to get them when they're in elementary school, but what a creative opportunity to get them in the university. But hospital is going to come after this. We're going to talk about what the mission of the hospital is. It really is health. Why is McDonald's and Taco Bell in hospitals? That's just insane. It doesn't make any sense. I kind of want to finish this panel up talking a little bit about, because of this is why we got door funding for accelerator food stuff, right? So to get the funding from the Door School of Sustainability to propose a food accelerator on the back of an envelope, we had to show that it was plausible to get a gigaton of CO2 out of the air by 2035. And so we cited the paper that you put together in your dissertation work to say, this isn't theoretical. They not only met the goal in 4 years, not 10, they extended the goal. And so I hope what everybody's going to be thinking today is the unique opportunity of a university versus a school where they've only got $4, and the $4 per meal is the labor and the other stuff. And the hospital, where you don't, if you're a patient, don't get charged for food when you have your heart attack procedure, right? But staff are eating in the hospitals, and it's sort of subsidized, which Helen will tell you in a little bit, but universities is a really uniquely different place where somebody would be interested in scope 3, where that could be part of the nudge. But it really is thankful to Jackie and everybody who worked on that. That's part of the reason why we're here and we picked this theme today, is because of this funding that we got, that we showed it is possible. And some of this will translate to elementary schools, and some of this will translate to hospitals and other institutional food settings, but some of it is unique to universities. So any sort of closing lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, Abby, you'll be last. Universities as a source?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're so right, Christopher, but I also think that procurement is a common theme in all these, and I've worked in healthcare, I'm working now in K through 12 schools, so I actually see a lot of through lines with procurement being really that moment in time where you become now responsible for the impact of those foods you bought on the environment, on the producers, and the impact that those foods you buy are having on your children, on your students, and on your patients. And so it really is, procurement being that through line is really this incredible opportunity. It's this invisible force behind every menu, behind every dish that's served is procurement. And as Moira was saying, it's a signal to the food industry about what the demand is, and a demand on a whole nother level than what you and I do in the grocery store every day. So it's just this incredibly powerful tool, and I'm so excited about this Door School project and to see it grow and continue to scale.
Thanks. Okay, so scope 3, university versus transfer to other places. Yeah? Is it the same, different?
No, it's very transferable. It's, the huge part of scope 3 is really just about supply chain, and that's, in some ways even more relevant to large organizations with, deep, long supply chains. So, absolutely, it's, worth thinking about. And I think to close, I would just say, just echo what Jackie kind of led with, which is that, in procurement, we're always looking for those win-win-win opportunities, right? We want to find the sustainable choice, the healthy choice, the inclusive choice, but at the end of the day, we need to be good financial stewards, and so I just think the beauty of this, food space is that we're really checking a lot of boxes that are just like kind of a no-brainer.
Fantastic. Okay, Andrew is a chef working under Eric Montel, who said, embrace these 24 principles of the menus of change. Is that like, damn it, now I got something else to do? Or, oh my God, now I have a roadmap?
Yeah, exactly. It's a great roadmap, and it's something that we can all adopt and just in our everyday life as well as chefs. And I think, we just, every day we strive to just hit all those notes, which is kind of, it keeps us sort of on the straight and narrow, which is nice.
Fantastic. Abby, to wrap up, from the CIA perspective, what an incredible partner the CIA is for this Door School application, to say how much we're focusing on leading with taste, right? So Abby, how does MCRC fit in with the whole CIA gig that you get to do?
Yeah, I think it's, as I said, it's kind of the engine here. And I think because at the moment, and this I would say for all of you in the room, part of Stanford on the academic side, this is a brilliant opportunity to partner, with culinarians and with folks like Chef Andrew, researchers, folks in sustainability. We're really bringing this, cross-functional group together, and that's really important when it comes to sustainable food systems. So I think it's a brilliant kind of collaboration that we have, and the university space is just so primed to help inform the broader food industry and what's possible.
Thanks for wrapping up. Thanks for listening, and we will have a breakout on university food later this afternoon. Hand for our fabulous speakers.